What if I told you 3 policies change the way millions of people feed themselves, maybe including you? What if I told you that these same people already struggle with poverty and high rates of suicide? And what if I told you 250 million of them have been protesting and the media hasn't been covering it?
As thousands of farmers continue to block roads into the capital, Delhi. They are protesting agricultural reforms that they say will leave them at the mercy of big corporations.
Thousands of farmers have been camping outside of Delhi. They began the protest about 2 weeks ago. They've been blocking highways and raising slogans against the government. And their main beef is that they're protesting laws that they say will allow monopoly of private players in the agricultural sector.
Since September, Indian farmers all over India have been protesting in places like Haryana, UP, and Punjab these new farm laws. And if you didn't catch the mistake I just made, you are part of the problem. Punjab is a character in Little Orphan Annie. Punjab is a state in India where many of these farmers have been protesting 3 new market laws that they would believe hurts them. And these laws are passed despite agriculture being now 15% of India's GDP, employs 42% of their workforce, and being the biggest source of food for millions of people in the country. But for my American friends who don't understand the largeness of farmers and agriculture in India, it's like greasy food and obesity in America. It's everywhere and people are willing to die for it. But here's the reality of the situation. These agriculture failures did not start with the current Modi government. It's a trend that has been going on since independence. So before the 1980s, politics in India was controlled by the INC, or the Indian National Congress, a federal government-oriented party who implemented what I like to call half-measured approaches, where a government intends to solve something but doesn't solve the core problem, but implements a temporary solution with long-term effects. For instance, the Green Revolution passed by Indira Gandhi in the 70s, which created highly fertilized seeds, new machinery, and new irrigation techniques, which was great for the farmers who could afford them. Farmers till this day feel the effect of this, because those who could not afford it went hungry, and those who went out and bought these technologies and couldn't produce well would even commit suicide because they couldn't pay off the debt. So this solved the problem of food instability that India went through in the 70s, but at the cost of sustainable livelihood. And to try and make up with this, the government intervened more in programs like the minimum support price system, which some farmers really do appreciate. But at the end of the day, this and the Green Revolution does not solve the central problem for Indian farmers, which is land reform. After independence, agriculture represented 50% of the GDP of India, and many peasants and farmers wanted an equal distribution of the land in the newly formed country. But when the INC did pass forms of land reform, it was unsuccessful. And one of the biggest reasons why was because it gave the redistribution control to heavy land-owning elites who failed to implement the reform. But in theory, this was supposed to work. But to be fair, when have us desis given up something willingly? Our parents still keep their expired coupons, and you expected these people to give their land away? Even here's the thing. Until this day, farmers feel this effect, as 4.9% of farmers control 32% of the land. 68% of farmers own less than 1 hectare of land. The large farmer owns 45 times more land than the small farmer, and there's over 100 million people who are landless. But the INC's failures resulted in Modi to come in power, really, of a dissatisfied electorate, and implement his policies, which weren't half-measured approaches, they were just ass approaches.
Farmers believe that this is nothing but harassment. Farmers believe that these reforms will make them entirely dependent on traders. In fact, farmers in Punjab believe that the Food Corporation of India and other central agencies will shut down annual wheat and rice purchases from the states, which will eventually make them dependent on traders, eventually leading to harassment.
Another reform is that no market fee or cess will be brought on farmers or traders. The fear here is that then corporates are incentivized, and there's no level playing field for the APMCs, the market committees. This directly could affect the farmers, and that's why they're up in arms. Now, another reform is the Conciliation Board, which will decide on farmer-trader disputes. Usually, in the case of such disputes, it is in fact the civil court that gets involved. That is why the farmers are scared. They're scared that with this particular board, the Conciliation Board being set up, they will no longer be able to approach civil courts.
The three new pro-capitalism or pro-market ways to get capitalism in the farming industry is backwards to what farmers want. In summation, right, before farmers went to the market for consumers and had a guarantee support price from the government with the MSP system, right, to sell crops regardless of how much they produce that year, right, because farming is variable. But now they're forced to go to big companies and big businesses to make this deal. And once again, in theory, this sounds good. Let the businesses handle it. But as I said before, most farmers in India don't have fertile land to meet these businesses and contracts' needs, or to even feed themselves, let alone companies. So only heavy land-owning farmers will even get a benefit out of this. And as we know, most of the farmers in India are small and rural. And the worst part about this is the fact that there is no guarantee in the law, because of the fact that these contracts don't have to be written. They can be oral. And therefore, the amount of abuse that can happen in this industry is going to be massive by big companies and big industry. For instance, Mukesh Ambani, the richest man in India, recently invested in agriculture, right a few years after Modi's election, and many economists say he's going to profit off of these laws. You see, these protests haven't been about religion or political parties, as many people have been saying. It's basically about survival. Now, here's the thing. Repealing these laws isn't going to be the solution, though. And going back to the way things were wasn't good either. That's why I showed you land reform. So it's like this, right? The INC, what they did was like that ex-girlfriend, right? Who you still had connections with and was nice, right, to the farmers, but most of the time was also bad. It was inconsistent. But then you get it. But then the farmers got into this abusive relationship with a guy named Modi, right? And he didn't want to make, and he's making you do things you don't want to. And he also hates your Muslim friends. It's just worse. So look, farmers need a second green revolution with equitable and corruption-free land reform, right? But taking the government away from this, a system that is, when works well, is supposed to help citizens, away and applying businesses which their ultimate goal is to put money in their back pockets, is stupid. Yet regardless of what I'm saying, these protests still continue to happen, with police using tear gas and water and excessive force on innocent farmers. But they're not going to stop because it is their livelihood. But the other problem is we're not helping them. Nobody knows about this and nobody's even talking about it. Take a look at Prime Minister Boris Johnson when asked about the protests in Punjab for a second. We'll show you the exact reason why this is a problem that nobody's talking about.
So will the Prime Minister convey to the Indian Prime Minister our heartfelt anxieties, our hopes for a speedy resolution to the current deadlock, and does he agree that everyone has a fundamental right to peaceful protest?
Prime Minister.
Of course, Mr. Speaker, and our views, the right honourable gentleman knows, as the honourable gentleman knows is of course that we have serious concerns about what is happening between India and Pakistan, but these are preeminently matters for those two governments to settle, and I know that he appreciates that point.
Look at this man's reaction. My desis, when your parents call you an ulukapata, a duffer, or a bewakoof, this is exactly their reaction. You can visually see this man losing brain cells. But regardless of the stupidity of politicians, it's their lack of attention to this issue. Here in America, that's what we have to do. That is a major reason why nobody's talking about this. Right? People around the world, not just India, have been protesting this, and there's been no media coverage about it. That is why protesters and reporters need to head to the White House, take a right, and go to the office of the president like Biden and Kamala Harris and ask them about what they will do for this injustice. That's it. But you're thinking, Raheem, that's too much work, and it's India, who cares? First off, if I need to give you a reason, which I shouldn't, But here it is, right? One, this may affect your pantry, right? As India farmer supplies much of the food grown around the world, such as rice, cotton, spices, wheat, fruit, veggies. But here's the thing, it's about the nobility of the profession. Farmers not only feed themselves, but the world. Right? There were reports of some policemen beating up farmers, and after they ended up feeding them. Gandhi would have loved to see that. We complain about 1 second when it's too hot or there are bugs outside, and these farmers grew up in it. It is their livelihood. Farmers, especially Indian ones, are connected to their land. It is their source of honor and pride. So use this link to donate to them. And I can't stress this enough. Share this post. Share a different post. And make sure that the Modi government is not able to bite the tongue off the millions of farmers who have been feeding us for centuries.